Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, co-editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com with you for another episode of the Steelers Post-Game Podcast. And folks, we're on the wrong side of these streaks. Now all of a sudden we're in, well, some really bad spaces mentally and physically for the Steelers fan base as the Steelers lose, 26-15? What a weird score that was. They've lost back-to-back games now to obviously the Washington football team in week 13 and now the Buffalo Bills in week 14. We're going to dissect it like we always do here on the Post-Game Podcast. Joining me as always, podcast producer Bryan Anthony Davis. What's going on, Bryan?
Hey, fellas. Good to be here with you. Wish it was better circumstances. Man, that game sucked.
Yes, it did. And the other co-editor of the website, Dave Schofield. What's going on, Dave?
I waited all day for that.
Yeah. Here we're gonna start off with knee-jerk reactions here in a second, but I just want everyone to know, like, there are so many questions surrounding this team. We are going to do the best we can to try and answer them, and to be honest with you, a lot of them we can't answer. No one can answer them other than those that are in the locker room. But let's start with his knee-jerk reactions like we always do. Bryan Anthony Davis, I'll let you go first. Go ahead.
That was one-dimensional. It was unimaginable. There was no imagination whatsoever. At the beginning of that game, everybody said, well, you got to get a running game going. So, heck, let's get a running game going and run it all the time on first down after the first series. And the drops started again at the beginning. It seems like no lessons were learned. Yeah, it feels like the sky is falling.
Certainly does. Dave, go ahead. Knee-jerk reactions.
Yeah, the sky is falling. You had the bad offensive performance against Baltimore, and you're like, it was a weird week. Then they had the bad offensive performance against Washington, and I was like, it was a short week. And I kept convinced, I'd start off saying, no, there's a problem, and then I'd slowly convince myself, it's not a problem. This 19-17 to 15 from a team that was at one point averaging over 30 points a game. This is a problem. This is a major problem. And I don't know that there's any easy fix. I don't know that there's a complex fix. I don't know if there's a fix in 2020 other than just, I don't think it's going to be something where they're going to be able to out-scheme any kind of weaknesses because it seems like scheme is part of the problem.
So I think this is for my knee-jerk reaction, which I did put this on Twitter right after the game. I said how, to me, this is a team that needs kind of an overhaul of certain aspects of the team. Okay. Offensively, you can talk about the running game. You can talk about the approach like Bryan did. They need an overhaul. So you have 3 weeks to get it done. Now, Mike Tomlin said in his post-game press conference that he thinks that's plenty of time to get it done. I'm not so sure I agree with that because now all of a sudden it's not just a matter of scheme. It's not just a matter of play calling. Now it's a matter of, do we even have the players to get this overhaul done? The Steelers had a ton of injuries in this game. At one point, Matt Filer was lost with what they called a shoulder during the game, but after the game, Mike Tomlin labeled it as a pectoral injury. It was the same story for Kevin Dotson, who filled in for him. We saw Gerald Hawkins starting at right tackle as Chuks Okorafor was tended to on the sideline. Alex Highsmith left the game with an injury, but he was able to come back in. It did not look like TJ Watt was 100%. He certainly was definitely not in terms of the high motor guy that we know he is. That's the issue with me. We all know that stuff needs to change, but now the question is do they even have the players to make those changes? We won't know until we see what some of these injuries look like. If Dotson and Filer and put them on the IR, then they're in big trouble. They are in big trouble for a lot of different reasons. Let's get to this super chat here. Mark Davison, he's a podcaster for BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. He said that was a rough game to watch. Even my dog knew what offensive play was about to be called pre-snap. Thank you very much. It's very predictable.
Holy dooly.
I
know I didn't say that right.
It is very predictable. It is very predictable. So we're going to do our best to try and figure out what the heck's going on here And maybe throughout this process, we'll be able to figure out where the Steelers should focus their attention moving forward. They're already in the playoffs. They secured a playoff spot today by the Kansas City Chiefs beating the Miami Dolphins down in South Beach. But it sure doesn't feel like there's anything to celebrate. We'll put it that way. So let's start off with our grades like we always do. Let's get to this super chat first. Steel Dog 88 gives us $5. $5 says if we keep playing like this, we'll be out first round of the playoffs. No one's going to disagree with you there. No one is at all. Trust me. All right, let's get this show on the road. Ben Roethlisberger, where we always start. He finishes 21 for 37, 187 yards, had a 5.1 average, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. None was bigger than the pick 6 at the end of the first half. He did get sacked one time. He had a rating of 65.9. Guys, this was ugly at times. How would you grade Ben Roethlisberger, Brian? We'll start with you.
I love Ben, but last week I gave him a lower grade, and I got a lot of flack for it. I cannot excuse his play. He didn't have as many drops this week as he did the last 2 weeks. He had some drops. I get it, but that didn't cause the interception. The second interception, I thought was bad too. Some people called for pass interference on that play. Wasn't called. Didn't matter. 2 picks. They were debilitating. Debilitating starts with a D. Give him a D.
All right, Dave, what's your grade?
I don't know that I'll go as bad as a D. I'll say C minus. Simply because I don't want to put more on him than what should be on play calling. I mean, we don't know because it seems like every time that something goes right, people are taking credit for it, and when things go wrong, it's always someone else's fault, even when you're talking about your offensive coordinator. So until we really know, I don't want to put it all on Ben, but the deep throws are not there. The second interception, I mean, he had him. He just couldn't get the ball there. I don't know if just Ben, age-wise and everything, if he's just worn down by the season or what's really going on. But the deep ball wasn't there. The intermediate throws didn't seem to have the big zip on them. It seems like all they're left with is short throws. And if that's all you can do, then you've got to execute them perfectly every play. And that's also extremely difficult to do. So I'll go with the C minus.
I'm going to go with a D because I got to be honest, I'm shocked that it's the first pick 6 he's thrown this year. With as many of those short, very predictable out routes that they run a lot of, I'm shocked they hasn't happened yet. It was a horrible time for that to take place. Shocked it hasn't happened. I'll go with the D. Here's a question that's on everyone's mind, though, and this is a $5 tip from William Hall. Thank you very much. He said, does Ben look right? Let me put this another way, though. Guys, is his arm shot? Period. Is his arm shot? Brian, what do you think?
I still don't think so. I don't think it's shot. He's not getting help with the running game whatsoever. He has to do more with that arm, but I think it's still there.
Okay. What about you, Dave? What do you think about the health of Ben Roethlisberger's arm?
It's not what it used to be. I think everyone knows that. I'm going to say it's not. I can't say it's not a concern. I can't say that. Oh, yeah, it's fine. It's I can't. I don't see we could say that, especially when you look at who was throwing the ball. On from the other team and the way he was throwing the ball out there. It just, I really don't know what to think anymore with this. We keep saying, the Steelers will bounce back, and they're not. They're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's pretty bad when it seems like they're playing right into the narrative's hands of, this is the worst 11-0 team in NFL history. And we all scoffed at it and said, come on. It's pretty bad. It is pretty bad. And it starts with Ben. That's for sure. All right, let's go to the next position. As we always do, the running game. It was another great effort for the Pittsburgh Steelers running the football. They rushed for a whopping 47 yards on 17 carries for a great average of 2.8. That's going to help their overall average. James Conner, 10 carries for 18 yards. Jalen Samuels, 4 for 15. And Benny Snell, 3 for 14. Mike Tomlin bemoaned the lack of time and the way that the game played. Whatever. How do you grade the running backs? Brian, go with you first.
F. I mean, it was a failure. They can't do anything with that running game. They're one dimensional, and that's the name of this podcast. They were barely one dimensional today, but being one dimensional means that everybody knows what they're going to have to do. Then they say, all right, let's try to fix it with the running game that's just not there. I applaud you trying to get it going, but it is not there. And we keep on saying, and I am very guilty of it, saying every single week, don't worry, it's going to be okay. They're going to get it together. When Connor comes back, Connor came back. Nothing was right. So, I mean, you guys could come out and give it a D, give it something like that, but there was no redeeming qualities to this running game that helped them do anything tonight. So it's got to be an F.
Dave, what's your grade?
This is the running backs, right? Not
Correct.
The offensive
This
line.
is the running backs.
I'm going to say a D- because I've seen that it could be worse from the running backs, and also I'll get to that when we get to the line.
I'm going to say D because, believe it or not, I thought that Jalen Samuels and Benny Snell actually had some decent runs.
Okay.
Someone said it on Twitter. I can't take credit for it. They said everything that the Steelers get via the running game is 100% improvisation, and that is 100% fact. There's never a hole. I think one time, I think Jalen Samuels had a nice run where it looked like it was a designed run. The hole was there. He hit the hole north and south, and it looked the way it should. The Steelers, outside of that, they just don't do it. They don't scheme it well. They don't block it well. But the backs also don't see it that well at times. There were a couple moments where Benny Snell was looking like he was getting warmed up. And then there were still some plays where it looks like there's a crease that he should just hit the crease, get north and south, get your 5-6 yards, and he's trying to stretch it out. He's not that type of player. The offensive play calling is not helping. They run as what we used to call it in middle school, a student body right, like a sweep right to Jalen Samuels. If I'm running a sweep, I'm not going to run it with Jalen Samuels. I'm going to hopefully have Anthony McFarland back there, but he was inactive. So I just don't get a lot of this. I'll give the running backs a D. I'll give them a D. Let's hear. Freaking Geeks Media gives us $5. He says being one-dimensional is fine until your opponent takes that one dimension away. And that's exactly what's happening with the Steelers these past few weeks. Very good point. So let's go to the offensive line run blocking. Let's do that next before we get to the receivers. Bryan, what do you grade the offensive line running the football?
Look, if I'm going to go ahead and give the running game an F, I've got to give the run blockers an F too. You guys gave the running backs D- and Ds because I know where you're going with this next because you're blaming it more on that. I blame it on it's the unit as a whole. It's both 50-50 to me.
All right, Dave, what are you thinking?
Okay, it's an F-. Because and I tweeted this out. I don't know if it was halftime or somewhere around then. It's tough. Today was my mom's birthday, and I had to call her at halftime, so I can't remember if that's what it was or not. Happy birthday, Mom. But I have to say this is, there's a problem with your run game when while the run is still happening, you are seeing multiple offensive linemen standing and watching. You're seeing multiple offensive linemen standing and watching while the running back is still trying to scoot around and run for his life. Okay. Finish the play. Get on your guy and stay on your guy and keep blocking him until the whistle blows. This stopping and standing and looking around stuff, that was extremely one of the most frustrating things I saw from this game was the number of times the offensive line is playing too high because they're used to playing high because that's how you drop back to pass protect. They play too high in the run game and they don't stay on and finish their blocks. And you see, and it wasn't even the same guy every time that you see at the end of a play an offensive lineman standing and watching. Yeah. Go hit somebody.
Yeah, and I'm going to say that I'm going to give him an F as well. I kind of view sometimes like run blocking as like tackling for a defense. You have to want to do it. You got to have that attitude, and they definitely don't have that attitude. So I'll give them an F. We have some super chats to get to here. Benjamin Potter gives us $4.99. He said, yet another end of the half disaster to change the whole momentum of the game. He's obviously referring to the Washington game where they basically gave them a timeout. It's bad. It's there's no other way around it. Andrew Palladino gives us $5. Says, I'm sad. Are you guys sad? I'm not happy. I'll put it that way. I'm not sure if I'm sad. Guys, are you sad?
I'm demoralized.
Yeah, that's a great word to put it, which is an extension of sad, frustrated, all those things tied up into one. Demoralized.
Yeah, it's not fun. Okay, so my melanated scope gives us $4.99. He said, I hate that my supervisor is a Kansas City fan, and I'll have to hear his BS for a while now. Still Steelers Nation. Love y'all. Good night. Thank you very much for the tip. We appreciate it. It's going to be rough when you're undefeated and you're talking all that smack, and then all of a sudden you get smacked around 2 weeks in a row. It's not fun. Cody Marshall gives us $5. It's too many things to blame for the loss. Hilton's pass interference, draw passes on third down early. Let's just abort the run. It's not happening this year. There's a lot to digest with this team. That is for sure. No ifs, ands, or buts about that.
But if you just abort the run, then the quick pass is never going to work, and that's like the only thing that they had going for them. You can't just stop everything. Like they say, if you're one-dimensional and they take that one dimension away, then you're really in trouble. And the more you can't do other things, the easier it is to take away the one dimension. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. William Hall gives us $5. He said, what needs to change and can we fix it? I think that you're seeing as we go through these grades that obviously the offensive line's a big problem. We'll get to that a little bit more here as we go into the passing game. So let's talk about the receivers and let's go down through those numbers. Juju Smith-Schuster finishes with 6 catches on 55 yards. He did have a touchdown on 7 targets. Deontay Johnson, 4 catches for 40 yards and 7 targets. He had another 2 drops on the game. Eric Ebron, 2 catches for 30 yards on 5 targets. He had a drop also on third down. James Washington, 3 for 29, another touchdown. That's back-to-back games for James Washington. Jalen Samuels, 3 for 18. Chase Claypool, 3 for 15. Let's grade the receivers, guys. Let's go with Bryan first. What's your grade?
You know what? Let's go with a C+ here, and that's pretty tough to do. But let me say this first. We talked about the drops early on. They happened in the first couple series. Then they stopped. I thought Juju had a good game. Wasn't targeted a whole heck of a lot after. I mean, I think those 6 catches were probably on 6 targets. Maybe he had one that didn't go his way. Well, the pick 6 didn't go his way. That's definitely a problem there. I mean, I thought they were better. Sure, I could give them a better mark, but it's tough to because maybe they're not getting open as much either. I will say this too. I love this team. I love all these guys, including the guys that I've been blasting for the drops. But I will say this, Chase Claypool, who I think is fantastic, has hit a rookie wall. And he is really not much of a factor the last 3 weeks at least. And they're not getting anything from him. James Washington is playing like a champion. I think Juju Smith-Schuster is playing very well too. I will actually put my hands together and applaud Deontay Johnson for the way he played when he got back in that game. The same with Eric Ebron, because Eric Ebron was missing a little bit too. It wasn't as glaring as Deontay Johnson. But the problem being is, why did it have to take for, oh my gosh, he's serious, he just benched us for a little bit to get the case of the dropsies out of the way? This message should have been heard at the end of the Baltimore game. It wasn't. It definitely should have been heard. I would have went home scared to death and completely demoralized. I'm using that a lot. If I heard that message, why did it take so long? So I'm going to go ahead and give them a C. They did some good things. Wasn't good enough though.
All right. What about you, Dave?
This was really tough because last week you felt that the receivers weren't really, they were really letting their quarterback down. This time they did early, but it was more of a mutual agreement this time, if you know what I mean. I do think there was times they could have maybe fought for some balls a little more, but at the same time, I don't think they were on, especially on some of those deeper throws, a couple to Claypool, to Washington. I don't think they were really where they needed to be that they could go fight for them. So it just all seemed out of sync. And when you're out of sync, your wide receivers, that's just kind of what you're going to get. I'm going to give them a C+, because I don't think that they played, terrible other than the early drops, but how can you really give anything? I mean, honestly, I'm going to change it to a C-, because so much of this game was on the offense coming up, not doing their part. How can you really give that great of a grade to any part of the offense?
I'm going to give them a D based on the fact that what this offense has become, what it has morphed into, is an offense that cannot withstand any negative plays at all. And that includes drops. And so that puts an extra onus on the receivers to always have to play out of their minds, essentially. And they didn't. Especially early in this game. So that's why I'm going to give them a D. Steel Dog 88 gives us $2. He said, thoughts on giving up before the half with 1 minute to go. Guys, what's your thoughts on that, Brian? He's referring to after the pick six. There was about a minute left. They had 2 timeouts. They elected to just kind of ride it out.
So I've got 2 buddies that are brothers that I text to in the middle of the games all the time. And I shocked them because I'm the eternal optimist of the group. And I'm one of the guys that I was so angry about that. I really was. And I wrote 2 words. One started with chicken, and I'm not going anywhere else from there. You use your imagination. I thought it was a cop-out. I thought, you know what? You've got a minute left. You get to. I know they didn't get the first down on 1st and 2nd, and they were saying, "Oh, with the timeouts, they're going to wait." Nah, come on, get 3 out of that. Show some passion. They didn't. Lived in their fears.
Yeah, Dave, thoughts?
That's a tough one, just because after giving up the pick six and the defense rolling that first half, and then you're going to roll into halftime down because your offense allowed them to score. That's, I mean, I could see it either way. I wasn't that torn up about it, but at the same time, I would have felt all right if they'd at least, oh my goodness, if they would have actually had to punt the ball back, then I really would have been furious, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So part of me is like, maybe that was the right call.
Well, but the problem is like you just said, the defense had been dominating the entire half. And so I could see both sides of the coin. We'll put it that way. Yeah. All right, let's get to these super chats. Machu gives us $11.02. He says, with a playoff berth secured and the bye seemingly unlikely with how we're playing, what would wins going forward help with? Obviously, they're wins, but why not rest starters for the? Okay, I know what he's saying. Basically, he's saying with the playoffs already locked up, what is the good for even seeding? Basically, why don't we just rest certain guys and then get through the regular season and hopefully be good for the playoffs? I don't necessarily buy into that logic, not the way they're playing. Okay, I don't think there's anyone on that team that should be able to say, you know what, just go rest up for the postseason. There's a lot to still figure out. Okamzo X gives us $4.99. He says, eat the loss, rest up. The Bengals are next Monday. Get back on track. The whole team looked gassed. Nothing like playing the Bengals to get right. You can look at it that way. Some can say that this is the final leg of that 3 games and 12-day stretch. Maybe they just need a week to kind of get right back on track. Not so much from though they're going to play the Bengals, which, I mean, that doesn't hurt, but also the fact that they're actually going to have a regular week this week for the first time in a long time. So we'll see. All right, let's go to Steph. She says, last week, if not even losing, that stinks. It's how we lost. If we've moved the ball and lost by 3, but you have something to build on. I think that's kind of the sentiment here. It's not just the fact that they're losing, it's how they're losing. Yeah, it's just ugly. It's ugly. There's so many different issues. Just awful. $5 from MFN royalty. Next game should be a bounce back. We'll be okay. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go. Love the optimism. Normally don't have that in here after a loss like that.
You know what? Can I say something real quick?
Sure,
we just got Canuck Bucks. Come on.
Oh, that's right. I
Hey,
forgot the Canucks
Bucks.
Bucks. My apologies. I'm trying to get to all these. All right. Keith Barnaby gives us $4.99. He said, I feel like it's time for a culture change. I'm at the point where Ben needs to call it. Steelers still holding on to that Big Ben era that is gone. I don't know. We'll see. See, Adrian gives us $4.99. This is from CBS, quote unquote, Ben with the knee problems. Do you think he's playing with major knee issues? I sent this to Dave, the link. I think I might have sent it in the preview Slack channel. And that was a report from Jason Lockenfora. And he said that there's some sources in the Steelers organization that are worried about his knees. Other than the fact that in the Dallas game, he left the game early at the end of the first half to get his knees checked on. And then the week that he didn't practice, there's been no reports of knee issues at all. Now, I'm sure Tomlin will get asked about it, but guys, are you concerned about his knees at all, Bryan?
There can always be a concern, but then I look at the source and I see Jason Lockenfora, and look, Jason Robards, Jason Mraz, Jason Seaver, played by the great Alan Thicke, would be more credible than Jason Lockenfora at this point. So you know what? It didn't seem like his knees were the problem.
Yeah,
so I don't know.
Dave, any concern there?
Well, it was funny because I actually saw that report before you did, and I did not send it out because of the source. That's why I didn't even check it to you. So he's been kind of known to, and been called out with several Steelers things that he says, I've had this source, and people were saying, I don't know.
Yeah, it is what it is. All right, here we go. Let's go to Coil God 8 something. $10. Thank you very much. He said the Bungles will be the last win of the season, one and done in the playoffs. We'll go down as the biggest mutts of the year because we had it all, then gave it away. I don't know if we gave it away. If they do go down, is that it might just be because, well, they're banged up. I'll tell you that. They're banged up. Machu gives us another $11.02. Is if you guys want another dollar, the team better get a W next week. Wink, wink. Injuries really sticking their heads out late this season. Need next men up to really start stepping up. So that's absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Thanks, everyone, for the tips. We appreciate it. Goes towards things like getting new microphones for our podcasters, some cool stuff like that. We do our giveaways. We'll use some money for that. So we appreciate all the love for that. Absolutely. Let's go on with the pass blocking. Ben Roethlisberger was sacked. Let me look at the past, the quarterback hits. They had 5 quarterback hits. Buffalo did. Guys, while you give the grades, I want you to chime in on this as well. Someone else on Twitter said this, and I tend to want my knee-jerk reaction was to disagree, but then I thought about it and I thought to myself, this actually might be true, that the offensive line can't run block. They're not good enough to run block, and they're not good enough to pass block long enough for Roethlisberger to throw the ball down the field. Guys, do you think that's true? And what we'll give you your grade, but I want to hear what your thoughts are on the fact of, is this pass blocking line really that good, or do they have it set up so that they don't have to block that long? Bryan, we'll start with you.
You know what? I can't really discount that. I really can't. This is tough. I'll give a David answer. I can't confirm or deny that. No, really, what I'm thinking here, that really could be, but it's being masked because he is getting it off. So, I mean, that's an assumption at this point, but it makes a lot of sense. So I really can't. It's hard for me to make a judgment on that, but it brings up a lot of merit. Let's put it that way. Dave,
what do you think?
It's a valid point. I mean, was the Steelers' offense through most of the season really just covering for weaknesses? Were they running the things that they were doing because they were covering up a weakness in the run game? They were covering up a weakness in throwing the long ball, maybe. Although it didn't seem like they had that early in the season. I mean, they just weren't completing them, if you know what I mean. I mean, are they covering up the weakness to maintain a block in the passing game? It's hard to say because it seems like we're frustrated with everything that the Steelers are doing on offense because it's the same kind of thing. But is that what they're doing because they can't do any of the other stuff? That's what I can't figure out. This is not an offense that imposes their will on the other team at all.
No, not at all. Dave, did you grade the pass blocking by chance?
No, I didn't. I don't know.
Okay. Bryan?
I did not either. You know what? It's hard to grade because, usually you'd give them a pretty high grade because they weren't that bad, but there's still a loss. And if that is contributing to the problem and we don't know it, let me go ahead and give them a C+ then.
All right, Dave.
I said C.
Okay, I didn't hear you. All right, give a C. I'll give a C. We'll give a C. What the heck? There's a C. Someone gave us another one of those super stickers. I don't even know what this looks like.
It's like a teal. It looks like a pear with a headband on, rolling and laughing.
Okay,
but what's crazy is that it's like, what is that? 78
HK. I don't know.
But that's when you look at the conversion, it's not that much, or else it would be yellow. So it's probably around the $5 range.
Okay, MZO X gives us $2.99. Says the O line is a problem. Yeah, I think that's pretty clear at this point in time. Let's see here. It's Flash 23 gives us $5. If we had all three phases working against Cleveland, what happened? I don't know. It's a good question. Leo C gives us $4.99. Said I can't deny that the O line is a huge liability right now. Healthy, they were not dominant. Now banged up, it's tough. It's going to be really tough to watch here in the next coming weeks because
it's almost like the whole team is out of gas.
It seems like it. Well, they had a bye in week 4.
Yeah. Sort of.
Yeah. Shane Van Hayden gives us $5. Ben has always been able to extend plays, even when the rush gets to him. The fact that he is not doing that now seems like it's on him, not the O-line. Okay, it's a theory. Well, it's a theory. We'll put it that way. Christian Cahill gives us $5. Connor's best year was with Knicks. Run Georgia where we pull guards and have Connor trail Watt. Also Clay Matthews would be nice for giving the linebackers a rest. There's a lot of banged up players on this team, and I feel like sometimes the Steelers have actually tried Watt on offense, and it just nothing's working at this point. So what is going to be working is us on the other side of this break. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, we're not going anywhere. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. If you're on the audio side of things, head over to part 2. We're going to diagnose the defense. Plenty to talk about there. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to part 2 of the Pittsburgh Steelers Post-Game Podcast. I'm Jeff Hartman, co-editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Joining me as always, podcast producer Bryan Anthony Davis, other co-editor of the website, Dave Schofield. We just talked about the offense, everything from Ben Roethlisberger down to the offensive line. Now it's time to diagnose the defense. But gentlemen, the defense, real quick. Let's do it. I want to get your knee-jerk reactions on just the defense before we go into specifics, because we kind of do that at the top of the show. We'll do it at the top of the second part. Bryan, we'll start with you. What's your knee-jerk reaction after this loss?
I thought the defense in the first half of that game locked it down, did everything they could do despite all the problems. Then they saw the pick 6, and I was like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? And then they felt the pressure. They came back after the half. Here comes Buffalo finding Diggs, and they started to gut him. And the problem was for the defense was they couldn't stop that. But they have so many people gone from it. I thought they played valiant, and it's really hard for me to completely rip this defense whatsoever. I thought they stepped up, did what they could. They ended up giving up 2 touchdowns in this game.
Yeah. What about you, Dave? Knee-jerk reaction on the defense?
They were doing everything they could until they were just let down by everybody else. I mean, that includes special teams, because next thing you know, Buffalo's getting decent starting field position off of kickoffs and and things of that sort. I mean, the defense went from only giving up a field goal in the first half to then trailing coming out of the half because of what the offense did. Then what's so frustrating is when you come out of halftime, what do you see right away? You see how teams adjust at halftime. And you saw Buffalo go 8 plays for 68 yards and a touchdown. You saw the Steelers go 3 plays for -9 yards and a punt.
Yeah.
The defense was just, it feels like 2019 all over again. They're asked to do too much.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah, you guys hit the nail on the head there. But let's get started on our grades here with the defense. We always talk about things in phases. So let's do the run defense first. The Buffalo Bills rushed for 104 yards. Zach Moss had 43. Singletary had 32. Josh Allen had 28 of his own. And then even Stephon Diggs was credited with 1 yard. Guys, how do you grade the rush defense in this game? Start with you, Bryan.
You know what? I am not going to penalize them for what happened in the last drive of the game, because really they gave up. I bet you they gave up close to half those yards in that last series. That still didn't culminate in a touchdown. I thought the rush defense was really good up until, like I said, that last drive. They were completely gassed. They were gutted. They just saw an interception. There was really. I'm going to excuse that, and I thought they had a pretty good game, stopping Moss and Singletary.
What about you, Dave?
Yeah, I pretty much have the same feelings as Bryan. I'll mirror everything he said.
What was your grade?
What was Bryan's grade?
Oh, did I get?
I don't know that he did.
You said knee-jerk reaction, so I didn't even give a grade.
Yeah.
But you know what? Let me go ahead and give them a B-, because remember, they did this without Spillane and Vince Williams.
So rush defense, I'm going to give them just an even B. I mean, yes, they gave up over 100 yards collectively, but nobody for more than 50. And it's just, like I say, they're being asked to do too much. They're being asked to carry the team. They're being asked to be on the field all the time.
Yeah.
They're asking a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to give them a, we'll say a C+. But like Bryan said, without Spillane, without Vince Williams especially, you're without two guys that know the system, that have been playing together now almost the entire season. So definitely a big issue. Now let's go to the pass rush. The Steelers did get to Josh Allen one time. It was the only sack they had, and the Buffalo Bills had been giving up a lot of sacks. Coming into this game, they'd given up 24, so they did a good job. And Josh Allen is a very athletic, mobile guy as well, so I want to give him some credit there too. The Steelers did get 5 quarterback hits, but still the pass rush. I mean, Keith Butler went right back to the blitz-happy approach that we saw early on in the season. Bryan, if you're grading the pass rush, what are you grading it?
I thought the pass rush hurt them in this game. So I'm going to go ahead and say that C-, because 1 sack was not enough. And I get everything you say about Josh Allen. I think he's a very good quarterback. He gets out of trouble, but we watched a lot of plays where the offensive linemen were eating up Watt. They were eating up the other guys. They got penalized when they did hold them. I didn't think that there were a lot of egregious holds that were missed. I don't even know if there were any that I was complaining about as far as, he was holding there. So it really didn't feel like it. I thought the Buffalo offensive line handled the Steelers pass rush. So I'm not giving it a great grade, and I always do.
Dave, what about you?
Yeah, it's funny when they called that hold against Buffalo where TJ Watt was held. It seemed like he grimaced with his shoulder when the way that the offensive lineman held on to him there and the way his arm twisted through, which, I mean, they're professionals. I'm sure that happens a lot, but I mean, they couldn't get home. Honestly, they should have had 2 sacks because the other one that they called an incomplete pass, Cam Sutton knocked it out of his hand. Yeah. That should have been a fumble, regardless of who recovered it. And because it's a fumble where it was, it probably would have counted as a sack. But yeah, the pass, it wasn't anything overly impressive this game.
Yeah. No, I'll agree. I did like what I saw from Highsmith, and he did get banged up. He has that. I guess he has this finesse to his game that Bud Dupree has never had, and it's just not his style. But I think he's going to be a good player, Alex Highsmith. Just wanted to say that, like, just get it out there. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I want to say two things. One, Cam Hayward was just destroying them in the first half, and that's what they had to adjust to. They had to say, we're going to focus on him and make the other guys beat us, and it worked.
Yep.
So that's the thing. So I don't want to knock 97 at all. And the other thing, Highsmith went down 2 different times in the game, and he came back. He just didn't seem to have quite the same motor when he came back. So I have to commend him for coming out there and playing through. But at the same time, he's a little digged up right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Along with a lot of them.
Yeah.
So I'll go with a C. All right. I want to get to these super chats before I lose these. Steel Dog 88 gives us $5. It honestly gets to the point where the offense can't keep up with the defense in the game, and the defense gets gassed. I mean, that was pretty evident. I agree.
Games.
Yeah. Greg S gives us $5. His thoughts about the refs' calls or lack thereof negating a Steelers fumble recovery early and allowing a Bills interception late. That's Dave, you just kind of talked about that a little bit. I thought it was at least worthy of a challenge.
The problem is if there's no clear recovery for the Steelers, and you can't call it a clear recovery because it wasn't recovered before they blew the whistle. You know what I'm saying? So because once they blow the whistle, they can say, well, players aren't going to dive on the ball. So since there was no clear and obvious recovery, it would have been futile because they wouldn't have got the ball for it. So it was basically a bad call from the ref that couldn't be corrected.
And let's be honest, I mean, we can nitpick calls. We can call. I could talk about the Mondo roughing the passer penalty, which was, I don't know what they expect him to do in that situation, but I mean, I guess he didn't
brought in a rules expert. He's like, it wasn't late, and he didn't get him somewhere he wasn't supposed to.
I didn't know if he was supposed to put a pillow down. He says to put a pillow down and have a blanket ready so that he can cover him up. I'm not sure, but this officiating crew was sketchy all the whole game, where they were throwing late flags, like on the James Washington. It was a good no call, I thought, but man, it was bad. It was bad. Let's hear it. Runner Delgado gives us $4.99. He said, I'm late to the show. Don't know what's been discussed, but does it seem more like Big Ben has an elbow problem or our calls from the offensive coordinator? I think it's an offensive problem.
Yeah.
I'm not buying the whole Ben's arm is the issue thing. But I
think it's multiple things.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it difficult.
Greg gives us $5. His goal should be to have the division locked up by week 17 and rest. Zero difference between 2, 3, and 4 seeds, especially if the Ravens are 7. Don't want to see them again. At this point, it doesn't matter who the Steelers play. I mean, at this point in time, it's going to be tough sledding no matter who they play in the playoffs. So the only thing that's comforting, I guess, is that the Steelers have locked up a playoff seed. So we'll put it that way. Let's go back to the box score and let's look at the pass defense. So Josh Allen threw the ball 43 times, 24 for 43, 238 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. I'm guessing that they're not calling the second takeaway an interception but a fumble, because I thought that would have been an interception. But he's only listed as 1, and Mike Hilton got him the first time. So that's interesting to keep that in mind. In terms of receiving, though, holy cow, Stephon Diggs, 10 catches for 130 yards and a touchdown. Cole Beasley, 5 for 41. Dawson Knox, 4 for 34. Gabriel Davis, 3 for 19 and a touchdown. At a moment where it seemed like the Steelers couldn't keep their feet because they were falling down all over the place, they also forgot to cover their best wide receiver in Stephon Diggs. Bryan, let's grade the secondary. Go ahead.
That's tough too. I got to tell you, I thought the secondary played a decent brand of football as well, but they got destroyed by who I think is a great receiver in Stephon Diggs. I've had an opportunity to watch him. I used to work right around where he went to high school, so I followed him in high school. And then when he went to Maryland, he is from about an hour from where we live. I think he's a very good player. when he got traded, a lot of people were saying that he's a problem, that he wasn't going to do anything in Buffalo. Even fantasy football drafters were afraid to go after him early, and they got a steal when they finally took this guy. He was phenomenal. He ripped them up. And there were some plays when Knox got loose. Even the Mike Hilton penalty. I was not mad about the defensive pass interference, because if it's not DPI, it's a touchdown. So, really at that point, Knox got free. You had Gabriel Davis. He got free. I just felt like where they started off very well, they fell apart in that second half. So, they didn't give up too much, but it's still a C performance.
Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, well, this one you almost have to grade it in two halves, because they were A in the first half. I mean, in the first half, the Bills had 68 passing yards, which means they had 170 in the second half.
Yeah.
Which I think they went over 68 in the first two drives of the second half, well over that. I'd have to break it down drive by drive. So it was the Bills made adjustments. And how do you not make sure you're covering the other team's best weapon? Well, I mean, I know the first one where I thought it was a bit of a push off that caused him to slip, but I don't know that it was egregious enough to call. I'm not saying it was a terrible call. I'm also saying that if they would have called it, I don't think they could have argued it. But yeah, they just kind of let Diggs run all over them, and that became an issue. So overall, so I would say it was an A in the first half and a D in the second half. So I guess I'll go with a C plus overall, which is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I was going to say a C, just a solid C. I mean, they were getting gashed at times, but then you tie in the fact that they were really blitzing so much in the second half. I wasn't sure why they felt the need to do that. They kind of got away with what felt like what worked in the first half. Still, I'll give them a C. Guys, I agree with this. Matthew says he gives us $2. Was it just me, or was the turf extra slippery?
I mean, it was snowing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what you expect when it's snowing.
Yeah. All right. So let's take some time here. Let's talk a little bit about the team in general. Mainly, we can talk about coaching if you want. I'm going to start this thing off with how I felt that this game started off so poorly. And these are the things that we talk about all the time as things that the Steelers are not good enough to get over. So let's go all the way back. Opening kickoff. What happens? Ray catches the ball about halfway deep in the end zone, and it seemed like 10 players on the Steelers team didn't think that he was going to bring it out, and he does, and the Steelers get the ball starting at their own 10-yard line. So instead of at the 25, they're at their own 10. What happens on the first play? Drop to Deontay Johnson. I mean, it couldn't have started any worse. The Steelers haven't scored what was the stat? Someone sent it to me on Twitter. I'll have to try to find it. Something like the Steelers haven't scored a first quarter touchdown it's been a while this season.
Well, they had an opening possession touchdown against Tennessee in week 7.
I don't think they've done it since.
7, I think 7, week 7, yeah.
I don't think they've done it since.
Yeah. I know there hasn't been a touchdown. I don't even know did they get one field goal in there somewhere on an opening drive? I don't know. But yeah, they're starting so slow. They're not doing their defense any favors to open this game. I said it last week. They needed to score more points early, to get the defense more of the lead. And they left points on the field against Washington, and they just couldn't get it going.
Nah. And then when they did, it was too little too late. But Bryan, we'll start with you. This is where you can bring up anything you want to after this game.
Well, you're absolutely right about Ray. I think if you start off at the 25-yard line, you might be looking at a little bit of a different mindset. That's a big difference. I thought it was ill-advised to come out, and I usually don't have a problem when guys come out. But he was really, he was back there. And that was just a bad decision. Then, as soon as you have that first play that becomes a drop, it's here we go again. And we talked about it earlier. You would have thought that would have been cleaned up way before you have to bench these guys. So, Chris Collinsworth is saying, well, they're going to go back to him. But with 2 drops, that's a huge deal. And then Ebron does it again. It just seems like it's, look, this is what's happening. This is who we are. We're going to play through it with just doing what we're going to do without adjusting. And there were no adjustments, even early on.
Dave?
I'm going to say something that's probably going to really surprise you guys. This is on Mike Tomlin. And the reason I'm going to say this is because I don't think Tomlin's the problem, but ultimately Tomlin is in charge. And you need to find the problem and fix it. If the problem is one of your coordinators, you need to fix it. I'm not saying fire people in mid-season when you're 11-2. I'm saying make them fix it. If it's a problem with players, fix them. If it's a problem with whatever, fix it. That's why I don't think the problem is Mike Tomlin, but the solution has to be Mike Tomlin. That's why it's on him. This is on him. You've got to, it's not about loyalty to your other coaches. If they're not getting, just like the guys who dropped the ball and, Deontay Johnson doesn't play pretty much the rest of the first half after that. Wasn't it until after halftime until we played again?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Well, guess what? If he's not getting his job done, if guys that are being paid to catch balls aren't catching balls, like you said, that's a problem, then you're going to find someone else who can catch balls. Well, if guys that are being played to scheme up these things the way they're supposed to, and they're not, then you need to find someone else that does that. Now, they played bad against the Ravens. They still managed to get the win. All right. Then you play bad, especially offensively, against the football team, and you get your first loss of the season. You were put in a bad spot. Now it's time to bounce back. And it's not that they lost. It's the overall general performance, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, that is not getting the job done. Coach Tom was asked the question in the post-game press conference. Now you have until next Monday night to play. You've really struggled offensively. Is that enough time to fix it? He said, yes. All right. You know what I'm saying? Mike Tomlin, you said there's enough time to fix it. And it's got to be fixed by Monday. You said it. Now do it. And yes, you're dealing with injuries. And yes, you're dealing with other things. You're dealing with probably worn out older players. Well, not worn out completely, meaning worn down over the course of the season, where these guys are kind of, they talk about rookie walls. You know who else hits walls? Veterans, because it's just a lot of wear on your body. And I'm going to go back to say it back in week 4. Wes, you were right. You were right. Having that bye thrust upon them in week 4 and not getting it later is having a toll on this team now. They managed to get through 11 weeks, but they just seem worn down. And guess what? There's nothing you can do about it. You can complain about it. You can say it's a bad thing, but you still got to show up out there and play the games. Yes, it stinks. So Mike Tomlin, you say it's going to be fixed by Monday. Fix it by Monday. You've got 3 games to get this back on track. And guess what? It's all about how you enter the postseason. I said it at the beginning when they were about 5 or 6-0. I said, this is a great start, but I'd rather have a great finish. Well, right now you've hit a bad spot. But finishing the season 3-0 can still be a great finish. And it's not just winning the games, it's how you play. So it's not about the wins, it's not about the losses, it's not about the seeding, it's not about the division, it's not about that. It's about playing better in these final 3 games.
I like those points. Very good. Hard to disagree. Let's get to some super chats here. 39 Ball and Cookie gives us $2. He said, "What the hell, Randy?" 2 to J Sam and a deep shot. There were plenty of calls that made all of us scratch our head. Trust me. William Hall gives us $5. He said, "Rest the guys who need it till Cleveland and get ready for the Super Bowl run." I can't even think if there's a position that I would say to do that. You would immediately think Ben, but at the same time, you don't want your quarterback that rusty either. So keep that in mind. Machu gives us $2. Again, he says, "I live in Hawaii and have no clue about snow." He's referring to the football field when we were saying it was snowing. So, well, that's a good problem to have. I wish I didn't know what snow was.
Yeah. We're going to know this week, my friends.
Yeah. Runner Delgado gives us $4.99. Said, "If you don't agree with Dave, you're a moron." Ha ha ha. Dave is speaking. He's spitting wisdom tonight. Spitting wisdom for sure. Go ahead, Bryan. Any final thoughts before we call it a show?
I am a moron, but I do agree with Dave. And here's the thing. So we talked about, and I agree with everything he said about the comment about the week 4 bye, but that wasn't even a bye. That was not a true bye. They were still practicing.
It was about not
on
having
Friday.
That's what it really comes down to.
It's about that too. So I'm agreeing with everything you're saying. There's a lot of people talking about the Cleveland game already. You just read a comment about resting players. I took a lot of heat the other day for the rooting guide on the preview by saying you've got to root for Baltimore to beat Cleveland. If you want them to have any semblance of rest, you need the Steelers to win one more game and Cleveland to lose one more game. And if that happens tomorrow night, that makes it easier on Pittsburgh. It doesn't mean that they start resting now, because I'm not counting it as a win, but the Steelers' best opportunity to win a sure game could possibly be next week against the Cincinnati Bengals. If they win that game and Cleveland has a loss, the division is Pittsburgh's. Then you go into that week, because it doesn't look like you're going to have a bye in round 1 now. It just does not look like that's going to happen. And I'm really curious, and Dave, you could probably help me out with this. If something happens that New Orleans beats Kansas City and they end up tied, where do we end up as far as the tiebreaker goes? Because they will both have only one conference loss. So I'm confused on that.
But basically, I think it comes down to the Bengals sucking. Meaning that the Steelers aren't getting, because it's going to come the ultimate tiebreaker if it's a loss to New Orleans and then both teams win the rest of them and they have the same conference records. It comes to strength of victory, and so in other words, how many wins total do the teams that you beat during the season have? So beating Buffalo would have been a really big one there because you would have got a lot of wins there. But they didn't, the playing against Cincinnati and only getting what are they now? I can't even remember there so far. The 2.5.
They have 2 wins.
Yeah, 2.5 is what you're going to get out of Cincinnati because of the tie and things like that. So that's what it's going to come down to. And I think already looking at it, I think Kansas City's a decent bit ahead when it comes to that one.
So there you go on that. So I'm going to finish up by saying that, you've got to you really have to root for Baltimore tomorrow night, no matter how dirty it seems. Don't worry about the fact that you don't want to face them in the playoffs. If you have any chance to get some rest, and this is going to be hard to get some rest for guys that are injured and dropping like flies, that offensive line, they're decimated. Really are right now. Really is right now. With losing 2 guys today. So, you've really got to look at, swallowing your pride and saying, go purple tomorrow night.
Dave, any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Like I say, forget the 1 seed. That's not what needs to be the focus. The focus needs to be playing better. And what you're saying, it's, when it comes to just flat up resting guys, that's not really going to happen. But if guys are dealing with smaller injuries, they might be less likely to have them play with some of these games. It's bad right now. but it's only as bad until your next good game. So the question is, will Monday be the next good game that the Steelers have? That's really about all I could say is that this is a trend until it's not a trend. And guess what? It's going to be the trend until they stop it. So they either are going to start playing better or they're in trouble. You're in the playoffs. You don't have to worry about that like has happened the last couple of years. I know it's ridiculous. You're saying you start 11-0 and you're just saying, well, you're in the playoffs. The way this team's playing right now, they just have to worry about being able they have to be playing better when they get there.
Let's get to some super chats here before we call it a show. Wilson gives us $2. Says y'all rock. As always, Fire Feetner is the lesson. Yeah, a lot of people want people wanted Randy Feetner fired for years. Adam White gives us $5. There's going to be lots of room on the bandwagon now. Let's stretch our legs. Enjoy the home stretch. Thanks again for the commentary, guys. Thank you for the tip. These night games are awful. I hate them. And when the Steelers play poorly, it takes me time to kind of wrap my head around everything. Not to be just a shameless plug, but make sure you check out my Let's Ride podcast tomorrow at noon. I'm really struggling right now to kind of figure out what's going on with this team. And I will get myself together. I will get my thoughts in line. And you might hear me go off tomorrow. It's a very good possibility. That's only on our podcast platform. So wherever you get your podcast, search Steelers or Behind the Steel Curtain and follow us so you don't miss a thing. Dave, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, someone brought up something in the live chat that I was looking at things overall. I forgot if the Steelers' loss was specifically to the Bills, that even puts them behind KC because it was a common opponent.
A common opponent, yeah.
That's the other factor that comes in. So yeah, that's don't even. Yeah, they don't have they would have to finish a game ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, just wanted to clarify.
It's okay. That's okay. So, in case you're just happen to follow us, know that we are an extension of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, which should be your one-stop shop for all things Steelers. We will be back next Monday night, another freaking late game. Goodness gracious. And after that, hopefully we'll at least be talking about a Steelers win. It's one thing to stay up late. It's another to do it after a loss. Hopefully that doesn't happen next week. So, folks, thanks for hanging in. Thanks for all the tips. We appreciate it. And we'll see you next week after the Monday night game in Week 15. Take it easy.